I messed up tonight. I lost another fight. I still mess up, but I'll just start again. I keep falling down. I keep on hitting the ground. I always get enough. See what's next. Birds don't just fly. They fall down and get up. Nobody learns without getting it wrong. I won't give up, no, I won't give in till I reach the end and then I'll start again. No, I won't leave. I wanna try everything. I wanna try even though I could fail.
And it is a proud day for us little guys, as they say, in light of recent events. Perhaps maybe not, depending on your leanings with the recent election. We may be getting into that a little bit later. I know that's what everyone's talking about. It's all the rage these days. But this is Zootopia Minute, the podcast where we look at every individual minute of the hit Disney film of 2016, Zootopia, and we look at its politics, its message, its people, its creators. My name is Simul, and I am here with my co-host,
Choco?
and we are on minute number 8. So this is from timestamp 8:00 to 8:59 in the movie, and it's right as Judy just received her badge.
And Mayor Bellwether, Assistant Mayor Bellwether, says, "It's a proud day for us little guys." And it ends right when Judy's dad's about to give her a care package.
Yes, a care package. A delicious
Maybe
looking care
it
package.
sums up what's happening in the country right now. I don't know.
Perhaps, but let's avoid that for now. And
Let's avoid the fact that we have a reality TV game show host with an immigrant wife as president. That's all fine.
I like how that issue you keep bringing up.
I keep bringing it up. All right, let's not be too xenophobic, despite some other
So
people
if you
being that
would
way.
like to hear our thoughts on the election, we may go into
We
that a
might
little
go
bit at
into
the
that.
end of this episode. But for now, let's stick to the minute.
Well, it kind of fits because we're in the scene where there are politicians. We have Mayor Lionheart pushing aside his assistant mayor. And I don't know. That's the thing. We don't know what's happening in this minute. I can't even think. We just watched the minute. I can't think about it because so much stuff has happened and it is just too crazy. I'm going to let you take it on right now because we're going to go in all sorts of places if we go off track. So
Okay, I'll try to do that, I guess. So I guess this minute began with that quick note from Bellwether. The little guys, it's a proud day. They gotta watch out for each other, all that. And this again sort of emphasizes the sentiments of the division between the predators and the prey in this Zootopian society.
we could see that there's already divisions within this culture that Disney is portraying on the screen. You have predators and you have prey, and we're going to see in the next minute that there is going to be fear from the predators, from the prey towards the predators, and you're going to see that the predators also have an interesting position within this society. And it's very, very hard, I guess, not to make comparisons to what's happening in the political sphere right now, especially right after this election where there's so much tensions on both sides.
Indeed.
And it's unwarranted. I think a lot of it's hyperbolic. At the same time, I understand why each side is feeling the way they feel, but the tension it was building. This has been one of the dirtiest elections we have had in a long time. And everyone's been slinging mud at each other. Everyone has been pumping up all these ridicules and lies of each other. And I think it just finally came to a head. And we saw with the protests last night, the amount of people who wanted to commit suicide, the amount of people who wanted to leave this country for Canada, to the point that it crashed the Canadian immigration servers. That, yes, there is a lot of stuff in this country that is wrong and needs to be fixed. And I think the thing that needs to be fixed is the society and the people. Like, we are at a position where it's us against them, and that we're not trusting each other. And I think that is definitely something that's slowly being raised up as we watch this minute. You could see that even though they look like they live in a hippy-dippy utopia with each other, that all these predators and prey and different animals of different species of different sizes could all get along. In reality, you cannot get along. There is no world where such a hippie philosophy would exist because there are divisions within that society. We already saw that division with Judy barely being able to skirt through her police academy training. And now they're trying to pass it off as it's something that's going to happen. You know what? It might not. It might work, it might not work. Disney's going to try to paint one picture, but we saw with what happened with the election last night that our country is deeply divided. And being a country of immigrants, different races and cultures and stuff is just, I don't know. It might not work. It might not
it's
work.
very difficult. I actually think this is possibly one of the most well-timed minutes we've arrived at, because
it might be.
what we hear is Judy's family. Now, once she's back home, she's getting sent off to the big city, and they're not too happy about the precinct she was chosen to serve in. It's the very center of the city, right smack in the middle of it, the densest part. Big cities in the real world tend to be most dangerous where they are most dense, just because it's a whole lot of people concentrated in one place. So I can understand that for sure.
It touches on some of the stuff we covered in different minutes. So Judy grew up in society where, even though she had to deal with foxes and weasels and all that stuff, she grew up in a predominantly bunny society. She comes from a town that's named Bunny Burrows. Her family is all bunnies, and, basically she grew up in a society that was all bunnies. That's all she knew. That's all she had until she went to the police academy, where she became the only bunny in that kind of culture. And now she's going to be going off into the heart of a city that is completely diverse, and that's just going to change things. And actually, if we looked at the electoral maps or any election, you could see that the cities and the urban areas of almost every single state is going to vote blue. Because that's where most of the diversity is. And most of the rural areas are going to vote red. So, I don't know, if we look at Judy, she's basically coming from, quote unquote, a rural area that's predominantly one type of species, one type of culture, one type of society. And she's going to go to the heart of something that is completely different than what she's used to. And whether she'll survive or not, we don't know. Spoilers. So, we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I think one of the important takeaways from this minute is some of the commentary that we get back and forth between Judy's father and Judy when he's saying, you've got to watch out for these specific types of people because they'll get you. Traditionally, we've had problems with them in the past. And Judy, she seems to be a bit more open-minded than the rest of her family. She's saying, Gideon Gray, yeah, he bullied me when I was a kid, but I don't think that's necessarily because he was a fox. He was a jerk who happened to be a fox.
I think it could be made for comparisons so for guys who don't know, Simul and I, we actually had a very, very long call as the election was happening. We actually did a live stream. I think we might, if we could salvage parts of it, we might upload it, but we basically had a long talk during the election process when Trump was announced as candidate, and we had a lot of talks on a bunch of little social issues and stuff like that. And this actually, I think, kind of ties perfectly with this minute, because we have Judy, who I think the term we were using a lot yesterday was millennials, which is a term we really don't like using, but it's the best way to sum up our generation. Judy kind of represents the millennial culture who's breaking away from the traditions of her family, and normally millennials seem to be a little more progressive. I think the most apt comparison is in the South, which is still predominantly white. You have a lot of millennial Southerners trying to break away from the traditions of the family and go off to colleges elsewhere in the States. And their old core traditional families, call them traitors, say they're trying to branch off. But we see this as something that's happening a lot within millennial culture. And we kind of see this represented with Judy, but we also see her parents. So her father still seems very, very suspicious, and her mother kind of represents the voice of reason, but once the topic of foxes comes along, she goes back, well, he's kind of right.
Yeah, foxes, you're right about those. But the rest of that's just totally closed-minded. But foxes, yeah, totally watch out for them. It's one of those old tropes. Foxes in nature are natural enemies of rabbits, obviously. There is that predator-prey relationship, and it's reflected in the way that the filmmakers chose to tell the story.
It's a very subtle, I won't even say it's subtle, it's right in your face. It's meta commentary for what's happening in today's America, which...
Yeah, I really can't get over the timing. Like, this minute, maybe any other minute could have worked just as well as this one, but this minute, just all the things Judy's dad is saying. Here's another takeaway as well, that I think following this election, there's a whole lot of divisiveness. There are hurt feelings. There are people that are upset. There are people that are frightened. Whether or not they really need to be frightened is up for debate. But, there are people that have those feelings. And I'm not going to question the authenticity of their feelings. But I think what needs to be avoided. And one of the lessons that this movie tries to teach, and it uses this minute to sort of begin to teach that, is that it is not fair to paint entire groups of people with a brush and say that they're all the same way, that they're all a certain way. And obviously, you know, the obvious analogy there is things like racism, classism, sexism, all that kind of thing. But what I think is important to also keep in mind is that we should not be demonizing people who voted one way or the other, because one of the unfortunate realities of having a two-party system and having the Electoral College and all of that is that not just through media, but also just through popular culture and all that, the prevalent idea is that there are two diametrically opposed ideologies, basically, and everyone fits in either one or the other, and there's no such thing as being in between.
Yeah,
I think the reality is that in America,
100%.
most people do fall in that main middle ground. What happens when you have two parties is that because there are only two options, it's a binary decision. It means that the party platforms for either party are kind of forced to cater to the more extreme views on each side, because it becomes sort of an echo chamber where the loudest, most outrageous ideas become the ones that are most repeated. It's just this sort of feedback mechanism that emphasizes the more extreme sides of these views. But most people are rather moderate. And so it doesn't help to look at how someone voted and use that as a basis for how you assess their personhood, you know? Like, the way people voted or party allegiance is becoming a decreasingly less reliable way of evaluating what someone's values are because of that.
And I think it's fair to say, because like I said, we were doing the live stream last night, and okay, both of us, we kind of fall in the same political spectrum, and but we also have a lot of friends who kind of fall on the opposite side of that spectrum on a lot of social media stuff. So on Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook, and all that stuff. And we've seen a lot of people attack people who vote third party, saying, oh, if you vote third party, you're throwing away your vote. If you vote third party, you had privilege. If you vote third party, you were voting for Trump, essentially, or voting for Hillary, depending on which side the person's arguing from. Or there are people saying, if you vote Republican, you are racist, you're a bigot. Or if you vote Democrat, you know, both sides were like tossing and grouping people into all these specific categories. It's funny because I thought this would be the end of the Republican Party, but it seems like it actually also collapsed the Democrat Party as well, because everyone's blaming Democrats now for what's happening. And
the DNC is taking massive heat because it's kind of been shown through all these WikiLeaks things coming out that Donald Trump's candidacy on the Republican side, the DNC had a large hand in orchestrating that and making that happen. You know, and a part of that had to do with their lockout of Bernie. A lot of that had to do with just, you know, collusion between the two parties. It's just not a good thing.
And they still lost. They were going against a broken party. The Democrats were supposed to be the most united party. They were going against a party. Most of the people who did not want to vote Trump, or they left the party, and a lot of them, if they did vote third party, they would vote for the Libertarian Gary Johnson or maybe Joe Steen, depending on what side they fell on. So they were voting against a fractured party to begin with, and somehow they still lost. And I think that shows a lot of people in America just to see the argument I heard a lot where people were not voting for Trump because they liked his views. They didn't want to vote for him because they thought Hillary was more unlikable. And the fact that the Democrats put the unlikable person up instead of someone like Sanders, I think really screwed them over. Though a lot of people are saying Sanders could have won. I'm not sure. He falls really, really left of center that I don't think he will appeal to the moderates. But going back to Zootopia, so we see this kind of division happening. So Judy kind of broke new ground in a sense. Actually, we could think about it. Hillary was supposed to break the quote-unquote glass ceiling of being the first female president.
She even had her party in a room with a glass ceiling.
Jacob Javits Center, where New York Comic Con's held. But Judy became the first bunny cop. And we saw what Mayor Lionheart was doing out of this. Instead of respecting Judy because this was something that she achieved on her own, she didn't ask for any help from any other larger animals. She basically accomplished this task of being valedictorian of her class. He basically paraded her out there like some type of trophy that, see, this is what my affirmative action program has done.
These are the fruits of my programs that I've introduced.
And I think that's disgusting that both sides have done that. Both sides have used and abused different groups. different minorities, whether they be veterans, whether they be the African Americans or the LGBT community or any other community. It's like I've seen both sides just kind of use these people, then they forget to treat them like these are actual individuals.
Yep.
And just treat them like some type of chip on their shoulder that they could use to parade around. And I think that's a detriment of both parties. The Republicans forget that these are Americans as well, and the Democrats just use them as some type of pawn to achieve some end goal, and that's probably why both parties basically failed this election.
Yep. If anything good comes out of this election, maybe it'll be the collapse of the two-party system, because like I've been saying, I think a lot of the problems with what happens stems from the fact that we are given the illusion that we only have two choices. And part of that, comes with just election reform in general. I feel like the first past the post system is also partially to blame.
I guess if people are interested in knowing what we mean by first past the post, there's a bunch of brilliant videos by CGP
Grey, yes.
Gray, who does some fantastic videos on the issues with these electoral systems and how first past the post, even if you start with a system with like 10 parties, will always wind up to become a two-party system where the majority in the center will not have the voices heard, and it's really only the two fringes that most of the country will not like that end up being voted in.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, if someone tells me they're Republican or Democrat anymore, when I was younger, I used to think, oh, that gives me a good idea of what they're like. But now I realize, no, I would have to talk to them for a lot longer because it's almost arbitrary at this point.
And that's
really
how it should be. I find it hard that most people vote nowadays because they have a D or an R at the end of the name instead of actually reading their policies. It's actually the lazy way of voting. And instead of actually doing their homework, looking at these candidates' positions, looking at their past and stuff, they vote for, what's their party affiliation. All right, so if you guys are following us, we see that Judy is now dealing with her parents. Crazy parents are trying to control her and stuff. And they're going to give her a care package. We don't know what's in that care package yet. Spoilers. Hopefully it's some nice little carrot treats.
Probably carrot related.
Carrot related.
At least tangentially carrot related.
And so she has a big family. We see her family. It's just adorable. She has a bunch of siblings. Do you think she's the oldest of the siblings?
That's a good question. I don't know. You don't really see any that look older than her at that awards ceremony or whenever else you see those children going around. She might be. I mean, that's got to be pretty impressive considering it seems like they have like hundreds of children also.
It could be that because they were saying that some of them also worked on the farm, and we did see that when she was younger in the earlier scenes, she did have siblings who looked her age maybe, so.
The funny thing too is that we know that they're kind of using human physiology as their time scale. Like that flash forward we had when she was a kid and then she was in the police academy. What was it, like a 15-year gap, 16-year gap or something?
Yeah, because she said she was attacked by Gideon when she was 9, so.
Yeah, and
they use human ages.
It's bizarre because rabbits do have a lot of young in nature, but they also age a lot faster than humans do. So, like, imagine that you live in a human society and you just have hundreds of children and they're all aging at like a regular pace. Your house is just going to be inundated for so long. Maybe
that's why they have to live in a town by themselves that's just for their kind.
Maybe towns, maybe rabbit towns, like that's not the only rabbit town there is. And every instance of a rabbit town in this animal universe, in this animal world, are just single families that have moved to like random empty places around, like surrounding the city and said, well, here's a nice spot. Let's have our family here. And then it just becomes a town because there's so many of them. That'd be interesting. I really don't know.
All right. I think that kind of covers it for this episode. So if you guys are interested in hearing us talk about the election, we might do a special episode later, but probably not. The next episode you'll see will most likely be the next minute. We still have 2 more episodes before we get into double digits. And by the time we get into the double digits, we are announcing something special. We will actually be finally having guests. This podcast was actually created to have a new guest on every episode in a similar fashion to what Star Wars Minute's done. And we actually have a nice roster of guests. We have people who work in the animation industry, people in the voice acting industry, people in the comic book industry, even people from the YouTube community and the brony and furry fandoms. But we've been kind of holding off on guests until we could get Alex Robinson and Pete the Retailer, the original creators of Star Wars Minute, to be our first official guests. It's been a while to try to get them on because they've been so busy with their own different work schedules. But as soon as we get them on, we will be announcing our later guests. But if we don't get them on time, we might actually just start bringing out our other guests we have planned. So it's something to look up for.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited for that, for sure. Get some new voices in here. Because I feel like probably some of the things we're saying we need a little bit of an outside opinion on as well. Because we do have, a similar ideological mindset between us. Might be some folie à deux kind of stuff going on. Who knows?
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that, guys. Thank you so much for listening. We know we rambled a little bit in this episode. Please forgive us. The election did happen just behind us, and we're still reeling from that. So,
but if you actually do want some type of episode where we talk about the election and just the stuff that's been happening in 2016, feel free to put it in the comments. You could email us at zootopiaminute@gmail.com. You can also follow us on our Twitter page at Zootopia Minute.
We've got personal Twitters as well. At Coledaniel, COLEDAIGNEAULT. That's me.
And I am at MetaArtist, META_ARTST. I think there's an I in there. I forgot how to spell artist. See, that's what happens when Trump becomes president.
The description. We got it.
Right.
Thanks, Trump. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Trump.
All right, guys, take it easy.
I'll see you next week. Bye.